Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the next in our series of How It's Done, where we talk about how composers actually realize the amazing sonic and orchestral effects that make their works so delightful. And the first number in this little series was so popular, and you gave me so many terrific suggestions that I had to do one right away. The suggestion is Richard Strauss, The Presentation of the Rose Scene from Der Rosenkavalier, where Strauss comes up with an amazing, absolutely amazing sonority to represent the silver rose. And I'm going to play it for you, and then we're going to take a look at the score and see how he does it. And I just wanted to say, folks, don't worry about not being able to read a score. We are not reading the score. We're just staring at them. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to look at it. And if you're getting, intimidated at like how it's laid out and what's in it and all that, you pick it up as you go. That's how I did it. That's how most people do it. You just look at them, you know what the music sounds like, and you kind of figure it out. So the bottom line is that at the end of this example, the motive in question comes in, and you can't miss it. So I'm just going to play the music, and then we'll talk about it. Now, that particular version of it did not come from Act Two of the opera, the Presentation of the Rose Scene, but it's a leitmotif. It's a motive that returns over and over again, and it represents the silver rose. And so you hear it at the end, which is when this comes from, and you hear it in the suite, which is what this is, not the complete opera. But it's the same music, and it's scored the same way, so it really doesn't make any difference. This was Gerald Schwartz and the Seattle Symphony doing his own suite from Der Rosenkavalier, which is quite lovely. There are a whole bunch of suites from it, because Strauss actually never made one of his own. The most popular one was put together by Arthur Rodzinski, and it's been worked on and diddled ever since. So don't worry about that. The music is the same music. Now, let's have a look at the score, which I have right here. We're going to put it up. Bang, there it is. And now we can talk about it. It's a big score. You can see there's lots and lots of lines for lots and lots and lots of instruments. But that's not really what matters. You don't have to worry about it. The way that Strauss creates this scene, this motive, is by a magical combination, because it's magic music. The music is supposed to be the magic of the silver rose, of love. It's icy, it's cool, it's distant, it's mysterious. It's magic music. It's not supposed to be the kind that you sing. It's not warm and human and lyrical. However, this motive appears in the context of music that could not be more singable and more tonal and consonant. And that's what makes these weird harmonies so effective. It's the contrast. If you were to play that little motive without any kind of tonal contrast at all. I mean, it would still sound strange, but it would have nothing like the magical effect that it does in the context of the opera as a whole, in the tonal context, because the harmony is all chromatic. That is, it consists of unrelated chords that are unrelated not only to each other, but also to the main harmony of the piece. And as you can see, Strauss is realizing it with, let's look from the top. On the top, you see 3 flutes, and they're marked pianissimo and pianissimo, triple P versus double P, which is a subtlety that probably nobody actually realizes in performance, but who knows? Sometimes they do. And then you have underneath the flutes a celesta. You know, celesta is the instrument that Tchaikovsky used for the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. It's like a little piano that makes tinkly bell sounds. And the combination of celesta and flute is a very, very common one in modern orchestral music. The two go very well together because the celesta is naturally high and bell-like, and the flutes give just that extra airy, light, magical quality to the sound. And then below the celesta, you could see 2 harps. You can see them marked there, 1 harfa and 2 harfa. And the way that those parts are broken up is very, very interesting. Here's a little harp lore. The harp, the modern harp, is an exceptionally complicated instrument. And it's a diatonic instrument. It has 7 pedals, and each pedal affects 1 note on the harp. Let's say all the C strings on the harp. A harp is like 7 octaves. It is almost as big a range as a piano. But if you want to change the C to a C sharp or a C flat, you have to use a pedal. A C flat, by the way, is a B, if you know your scale, so it's the same thing. But you've got to use the pedals. And that means that all of the note Cs on the harp are going to be C sharps now instead of the C. So if you're writing chromatic harmony, that is harmony that has lots of foreign notes to whatever key you're in, you got to do a lot of pedal work to try and switch all the strings around in time to play them. And that is why Strauss has broken this motive of the Silva Rosa between the 2 harps. It's to give the players time to change the tuning of the different strings they have to use for the different chords. Now, maybe someone out there is a harpist and can talk about that in greater detail, but writing for the harp is a whole school in and of itself. It's really, really tricky, especially if you're going to write a lot of very chromatic harmony. And then below the harp, you can see 3 violins. It's 3 solo violins playing in their highest register, and they're doubling the flutes. And to add just a little extra shimmer on top of the celesta part, there is a glockenspiel. You know, a set of small orchestral bells. It looks like a little xylophone, only it's metal and it goes ting, 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 ting. You know, hit it with sticks. So between all of that, you have this unbelievable, glittery, shimmery sonority, and everybody else is doing other stuff, but basically holding a warm, lovely tonal chord against which this motive will shimmer like the stars in the evening firmament. And it represents the magic of love. So you hear it in the second act when Octavian presents Sophie with the silver rose and they fall in love. And then in their final trio, which becomes a duet after the Marschallin takes off, and they sing, Mir ist so wunderbar, oh, I can't believe it, I love you, you're my all, you're my only, you're my joy, you're my, you know, it's all that nonsense. But you hear this motive over and over and over and over. It represents the magic of young love. And that's how it looks in the score. And I think that it's really a very straightforward, simple thing. But the arrangement is what makes it so fantastical. It's really an amazing example of exquisite orchestration. But there's a little bit more to it than that. I want to play you the example one more time now with the score up. And when it comes in, you can just sort of take a look at it, how it sounds for it plays a couple times in this example. You'll see it once in the score. So here it is one more time. there you go. That's how it's done, with flutes, a little bit of a glockenspiel, a celesta, 2 harps, and 3 solo violins. An extraordinary combination of instruments. But that's not all, my friends. Why? Because that sonority was so powerful and so hypnotic that certain other composers might have borrowed from it just a tad, including Respighi, who uses it in the first movement of his Fountains of Rome, which came along about 6 or 7 years after Der Rosenkavalier. And it's a really pretty clear takeoff. And I'm going to put up the score so that you can see that one too. But first, let's listen to the Respighi example. It's let's see, we have it right here on this Naxos recording with the Royal Harmonic and Enrique Battiz. So here's the next example of the same music. Now, let's see what that looks like. Here's the score. Now, as you can see, Respighi's score is much smaller. Of course, it has no singers. It's a smaller orchestra, a more, shall we say, reasonably sized orchestra. Strauss wrote for gargantuan orchestras with lots and lots of complications in the parts. Everybody gets their own line and all that stuff. Respighi didn't. Respighi is a student, or was a student, of Rimsky-Korsakov, who was an equally great orchestrator as Strauss or any of those people, but he believed in making the most out of simple means. And so Respighi gets virtually the same sonority, not exactly, but very, very close, only using piccolo, 2 flutes, and the celeste. That's all he needs. And he's got the meat of it. He's got the same effect without all of the extra detail and filigree that Strauss adds to it. Is it exactly the same? No, it's not. But it's still very, very close. And you can see that Respighi is also getting the maximum effect from the minimum of resources. It's an entirely different way of writing for orchestra. Entirely different. But the sonic result is surprisingly similar. And so I think that makes a very interesting example. And I want to thank all of you. And there were a bunch of you who suggested that we use it because it gave me this opportunity to talk about both of these examples in contrast to each other, which is a wonderful way to get to know how the orchestra sounds and how composers write for it. So I want to thank you for joining me for this talk and also ask for you to join the Haydn Symphony Crusade. I mean, if you don't want to join the Haydn Symphony Crusade, there's already 36 videos. We've done 36 Haydn videos, 1 for each symphony. 37 is coming soon. If you don't want to do it, get the T-shirt in the ClassicsToday.com merchandise shop. Then you can lie about it to your friends. They'll be very impressed, I'm sure. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.